Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, that's Sanford Hess, and this is Row Reviews Home Edition, another edition where Sanford and I are filming in separate locations, both in movie theater seats, talking to you about movies. This week, we are going to be covering two more classic films. They're classic in the regard that one of them actually is a classic, and one of them came out 8 years ago. Uh, the first of those is Heat, directed and produced by Michael Mann, the same man who brought you Collateral and a bunch of other really amazing action caper films, as well as the television series and the movie Miami Vice.
Yes,
This film,
absolutely. Yes.
uh, were you a fan of Miami Vice, Sanford?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I was in junior high and high school when that TV show was on. And, obviously it's a little cheesy because it was an 80s show, but I mean, that show was about as stylish as you could possibly make a TV show.
I would agree, considering the wide boat shots that they used. It felt like a movie budget in the 80s for a TV series. I did
Right.
not see the remake, however, so I don't know that much about it.
Yeah. I
Uh,
didn't see the remake either.
well, that would be an interesting viewing for a future show. So we're focusing on Michael Mann's film Heat that stars Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Ashley Judd. Uh, there's so many other people. Danny Trejo. Um, uh, what's his the Allstate guy, Dennis
Uh,
Haysbert.
yes.
Uh, and it centers around a career heist criminal played by Robert De Niro. Uh, and you watch him as he goes through one score, and he has another really big score that he wants to undertake before quitting the business entirely. And he decides he wants to quit the business because he meets a woman named Evie. And Evie is played by Amy Brenneman. And if you don't know who that is, watch the first 4 to 5 seasons of Private Practice, where she's prominently shown, or I believe the television show Providence. Um, Having said that, this is all about the cat and mouse game between the police and the main guy doing the heist and the chaos that ensues because of it. I really, truly had not seen this film before. I mean, I had heard about that amazing scene between De Niro and Pacino, but that's as far as my knowledge went for this film. I found it to be very well structured. Um, there was a weak link in the movie that I'll talk about later, but the dynamics between all the characters worked. The action was well filmed and tense, and you felt like you were in it with these people. I can't even imagine what seeing this film would have been like for people in 1995. They must have been on the edge of their seats because that's how I felt watching this film, and I watched it from a computer.
Right. Right.
Um,
And the interesting note, I'd have to double check the years, but one of the things I think that inspired the last scene of this movie was that there was a huge shootout in downtown LA with some people who were robbing a bank who were actually had body armor on. And I think that, that sort of infused that last scene with the ideas of having this tremendous, ongoing shootout throughout downtown. And, like you said, you can only imagine the reaction of people because, I mean, you don't see, at least I can't recall a recent movie, maybe I just don't see these kind of movies very much anymore, where they have that kind of a shootout in a public location. Probably after 9/11, it just kind of became more taboo.
Right. They did it a lot in the 90s with like even the movie Sister Act had a car chase like through half of Las Vegas. And like it, it was that kind of a thing.
Right.
It was a trope for 90s action movies to do something big in a very public place where people are running and screaming out of the way. And in that way, in that time, it probably felt a lot more real. Um, I loved Al Pacino's performance, and I know why people do impressions of him now
Yeah,
because
I wanted to say also. I mean, Al Pacino's performance it was over the top. I mean, it was absolutely just, he's over emoting, but he was definitely the most magnetic part of this film.
absolutely. Like I loved his subdued moments, but his outright crazy antics. For example, grabbing the TV during a fight with his wife and taking it with him, and then being so pissed off that he lost his wife that he kicks it out of the car. Amazing, great, just perfect.
Yeah,
There's also a much younger version of Natalie Portman in this film.
right.
The more I see of Natalie Portman, the more I like her, because even when she's a child actor, quote unquote, she's still believable.
She's,
Complete.
not to get off target, but in The Professional, one of my favorite, absolutely one of my favorite action movies of all time. She's excellent as this like gutsy 15-year-old, which I think that was actually a little bit before this movie came out, because here she was good, but I mean her character, there wasn't a lot going on with her character.
I mean, there was and there wasn't. She had an absentee father to deal with, and that
Right.
that must have been hard on her as a person. Within the character, of course. Um, and I liked her performance a lot. What did you like about the movie Sanford? Because we're talking a lot about what I like. What did you
Right.
enjoy?
Well, I always say that I like a band that has a lot of members, and I like movies that have a lot of characters. And obviously, Heat, it clocks in at 3 hours, and they take the time to develop plots among like Al Pacino's wife and his stepdaughter and her relationship to her father. Which, if this movie had been 90 minutes or an hour or 2 hours long, those things would have wound up on the editing floor. And I like the fact that this one took the time to actually flesh out the characters. You actually got to know some of them, not just the bad guys, although I like that, but also the good guys. But on the flip side of that, I found this movie going down some paths that just didn't kind of make sense. For example, the guy, like, well, you brought up Danny Trejo, and this whole sort of subplot with him getting beaten up at the end by, and help me out because it's been a little since I saw this movie. What was the guy's name? Who was he
Oh,
joined their
uh,
crew, and he turned
I
out to
forget
be,
what the guy's name is, but I detested him.
yeah. Well, you're supposed to, but I didn't understand the subplot with him and him beating up Danny Trejo and what happened and
Because Danny
why.
Trejo was supposed to be the driver, and he knew that same driver from last time. So his whole idea was, I need to mess up Robert De Niro's crew. How can I do that? Well, I know who these people are now, so I'm gonna go after him and just dismantle every piece of whatever his next score is. Danny Trejo is part of that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to buy that, but again, it just those are side paths that this movie took that ultimately weren't necessary. I mean, there could have been a much more linear plot. So, it's a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, this kind of movie was a bit of a meandering mess at
Mm-hmm.
times, but also, like I said, I really love the fact that there's a lot of characters, and I'm just thinking of sort of the one of the detectives who got shot at the end, the white guy with the mustache and stuff. They
Yeah,
actually took a few moments to introduce what his relationship with his wife was at the dinner party. So he wasn't just some faceless guy who happened to get shot. You actually, when he gets shot, you're like, oh, that guy, I know him, which
yeah.
brings more empathy to the movie watcher. Now, one of the things I really didn't like about this movie, and it's not just this movie, I do not like Robert De Niro as an actor.
Oh snap! The
Like,
gauntlet's been thrown down. Oh my!
yeah, all right. So, I mean, there's only one character that he plays believably, which is a psychopath. And at times in this movie, he's playing a psychopath because this guy has sort of lacks emotion, and he has no chemistry with Evie. His, there's, yeah, we're,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like you're telling me Robert De Niro is gonna fall in love with a book nerd?
yeah. Well,
Nah.
but I mean, but a good actor could maybe make you believe that, but not Robert De Niro in this film, in this character. I just didn't believe him on any part of it, except for example, the opening credits, which are super stylish. And from the first opening credits, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Where we're following him sort of going through his, just getting to the ambulance, which was, I had to go back and watch the credits again after the movie was over, just because I loved that so much.
Hmm.
But anyway, you're just watching essentially a psychopath walk around. He has no emotion. There's no interaction between him and any other human. And Robert De Niro is convincing as that. Any other emotion is hard for him to play. I didn't even believe his relationship with Val Kilmer. That's
Uh,
his blonde kind of number two guy.
yeah, I know who he is. I'm just trying to figure out whether I believed it. I guess I did, but they didn't flesh him out enough. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. They did flesh out Val Kilmer's character enough for me to care about what happens to him.
I cared about
But
him. I mean,
I
his
didn't believe in the
relationship.
friendship. No, you're right. I didn't believe in that friendship at all.
Yeah. I cared about him and his relationship with Ashley Judd. I thought they did a really good job with that. I mean,
Ooh,
and
see,
again, Val Kilmer's relationship with Ashley Judd.
hmm
Again, those were some of the details that this movie took the time to flesh out that a lot of times they would have just skipped right past. And that key scene where he's coming up at the end and she kind of gives him the sort of, the sort of hand signal. I thought that was a really cool scene. I mean, that just spoke a lot about those characters.
I'm about to trash Ashley Judd
Go
super hard.
ahead.
The only good scene she had in that movie was that scene you just described. She felt completely flat for me the entire rest of the movie. Um, Not that she was emotionless, she clearly wasn't, but she clearly sounded like she was reading lines and not acting out a personality. And I felt like that took away from the investment that I had with the film a little bit whenever she was on screen. I'm like, oh great, I gotta deal with more of her fake BS. Um,
I'm
just
not going to argue on that one. Yeah. Yeah.
do you agree with? Then I
Yeah.
figured,
I don't remember watching it and thinking, ugh, but I'm with you on the fact that, it, it wasn't I mean, she was maybe I'm gonna give her an out. Maybe she was young. It was early in her career. I don't know. But
who
yeah, it was
knows?
okay.
But for me, that was the weak link of the movie. I want to talk about um, the final confrontation. I want to skip the bar scene that everybody knows, and I want to talk about the final confrontation because I
Okay.
think there's something significant about that for me. Um, I hate the ending of this movie.
Which part?
The fact that he actually goes and kills uh, the guy who's green something.
Kills Robert De Niro?
No, 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 no. When Robert De Niro kills the guy that
Okay. In the hotel?
in the hotel that had been doing the crime spree, killing prostitutes and whoever else he wanted.
Right.
Um, he didn't have to go back. He was home free.
But that's okay. So here in and of itself was why they threw that entire plot line in, and it's almost like it's an artificial plot choice to say, oh, we're going to think of a reason for him to throw it away so that you don't have, for example, a happy ending, or you don't just have where they arrest him at the airport on his way out of the country. That for whatever reason, Michael Mann made this choice to develop that so that you wound up with this ultimate showdown where, and that's the part I didn't like, where it devolved into two guys chasing each other around an airport or whatever, wherever they were outside.
Yeah. For me, that might be the one weak plot point because I would have rather seen that guy dispatched earlier in the opening scenes of the movie rather than have him be the thing that everything ties back to. And
Right.
for the love of God, man, Natalie Portman's father to me
Yeah.
should have been Robert De Niro.
Oh, interesting. That would
Because,
be one interesting. Wow. Okay.
I mean, for me, like, it's like they kept hinting, your dad's not around, your dad's not around, your dad's not around. I'm like, what if, the life he left behind was the life with her?
Hmm.
She ended up with the cop.
That's interesting. Well,
And of course, because he could have always gone by another name, she's not going to keep pictures of him
yeah,
in the
right.
house.
That's interesting. All right, I got one last complaint, and then we're going to move on from this one. My
Yes.
last complaint is John Voight in this movie. So,
Oh God.
yeah, this is the Deus Ex Machina. This is the lazy filmmaking where, well, we have to think of a way to provide information. So let's just have some magic guy who, whenever Robert De Niro needs information or anything done, he just calls this guy, and this guy can do anything. He can provide him all this information about Al Pacino. He can provide him how to, where to go and hit the score on the armored truck. It's just so much fake plot stuff.
Might I add, while double crossing him to the people he's trying to steal from.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and that was like an unnecessary twist, also. So, all right. So enough of us. I mean, Heat. Ultimately, do you here's our exit question. Do you recommend it?
I do. People should see it just for how much you have Al Pacino overacting, and to see whether you really do agree with Sanford and feel like Robert De Niro is flat, other than when he's being a psychopath.
There you go. I agree. Also, it's a movie worth seeing. Although clocking in at 3 hours, it's a commitment. So one of the ways that we can choose to use the pandemic to our favor.
One of the things Robert De Niro's character couldn't do.
There. All right. So let's transition to the other film that you asked us to review, which was.
I feel bad about this one.
Do you? All right. Tell our audience about it first, and then we'll talk about that.
The other film we're reviewing today is Contagion from 2011. Now, this had an all-star cast of
everybody.
If I can get all this: Matt Damon, Lawrence Fishburne, Gwyneth Paltrow, Marion Cotillard,
Jude Law, Bryan Cranston. You name it. They were in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So the plot of this is pretty simple. One person goes to, was it China or Japan? I can't remember.
China.
Goes to China and eats a meal.
Well, I think it was Hong Kong. But
Hong Kong, so Japan.
Yeah. No.
Goes to Japan and eats a meal.
Yeah.
That same person who has a husband and kids flies home, gets sick, starts having seizures, and eventually dies. This virus also spreads to other people. Her husband, played by Matt Damon, finds out he's immune, and he watches the different agencies within our government try to figure out a way to build an immunity for this virus that is killing everyone. We learn later that it's through monkey and it was
bat and pig.
Bat and pig, but a monkey was involved in there too.
Well, the monkey was used to develop test the vaccines.
Right. So therein, we have people dying from the virus. We have the one person immune to it, and we have basically the entire CDC discussing how to go about building this immunity to the virus.
Creating a vaccine.
Yeah.
More to the point, I mean, this movie, was very much about what's going on now, except that the disease in the movie is incredibly more lethal.
Yeah, more lethal. Still an airborne virus.
Yes.
But more lethal for sure.
Right.
There's a reason that I'm not as fond of the movie now as I was when I originally reviewed it.
Okay.
Even though all the medical things that are happening basically make sense to me, I can't get emotionally connected to anyone. Not because I think they're going to die, but because I'm not given enough information to start to care about people. And for me, that's the basic problem of watching Contagion. It just feels like a bunch of people doing things to solve the problem of how do we fix this virus? How do we stop it? And as much as that's great, if you can't emotionally connect to those involved in the fight, then it doesn't make any difference.
Well, I mean, so first of all, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, this movie was 100 minutes or, it wasn't even 2 hours, and it covered a lot of ground. Yeah. So this movie went very quickly through a lot of things, and I think you're right. That's one of the parts that was left out was more of the human aspect. If it had been 3 hours like Heat, because it has as large of a cast as Heat, and if it had been longer, you would have had more time to care about the characters. But I'm going to challenge you on this a little bit, because I think Matt Damon is thrust into that role for us as the stand-in for the audience. Because,
yes, that's true.
Here he is, like you said, it's his wife who dies first, but really, she dies early in the movie. And for the rest of the movie, it's more about him and his relationship with his daughter and his desire to keep his daughter. who, he doesn't know if she's going to be susceptible or not. His desire to keep her safe, that really becomes, I guess, the only emotional tie that we have to the movie is his experience.
And that's what I'm saying. My problem is that he's the only emotional tie. I mean, his stepson dies early on in the movie,
Right. Right.
and as sad as that is, because it gives him more motivation to fight for the only relatives he has left, he's our only link, and that's my problem. Like,
Well,
once we start
was
moving
your
around to different areas, it becomes a muddled mess.
do you think your problem has to do with you didn't really buy into caring about Matt Damon? Was it his performance? Because his
No, I
performance was
bought
kind of
Matt
low
Damon.
key.
I bought Matt Damon. I just didn't care about anybody else. Like, I
Yeah.
was every time you took me to the different parts of the CDC or scientists working on the cure, I was like, get me back to Matt Damon because I know they're getting closer and closer to finding something, and I want to know how he's feeling relative to everything that's going on, rather than taking me to all these different people who are fantastic actors in their own right,
Right.
but aren't doing anything for me.
Yeah, there's a little too much Jude Law's character as the sort of drudge report kind of internet blogger. A little too much of that plot line, I felt like. I agree with you. I think, Matt Damon's character was so low key, but that was, and obviously this is a strange movie for us to watch now in the middle of a real pandemic. And we'll talk for a minute about what it got right and got wrong. But, that was one thing that the only bits of it that it really showed about like what daily life was like were the scenes with Matt Damon and his daughter.
Agreed.
Whether it's the food shortages or whether it's people breaking into people's homes or
Mhm.
whether when he decides very much like they just did the other night throwing her a prom at his house,
Yeah.
um, you know, sort of addressing the what is daily life like for the other couple 100 million people in the US besides the 5 people at the CDC who we're spending all this time with. But I will say, and who was it? Is it Emily Blunt or who was the CDC doctor who died?
Oh God, I'd have to look. I
Yeah.
think
But
I don't know. I need to look.
I mean, I thought her character was probably the one with the most emotional resonance because, you cared about her. She was trying to do good. And then when she diagnosed herself and realized she was getting sick, that was
Mhm.
probably the most emotional part of the movie to me because you felt her anxiety, you felt her everything. And again, I mean, I want to give some credit to this movie. It didn't hesitate from killing off its main characters. And so it wasn't like she became one of the people who got, because I was kind of expecting that to happen. I thought, oh, well, she's going to get better and then she's going to be, like the super doctor because she's safe from it. And nope, they killed her off. And I was like, okay, I respect this movie for that.
I mean, I the only thing that moved me was when Gwyneth Paltrow died
Mm,
because there was so much, like you said with the other doctor, fear,
yeah.
and that's how you actually leave Gwyneth Paltrow's character when she dies. Complete paralyzing fear, and I think that's one thing that the movie got right.
Well, let's
People
talk about what else did it get right about the pandemic aspect.
The way research was communicated to different departments was communicated, I believe, as close to correctly as possible, although I'm not a scientist. Um,
What about the aspects on just everyday life?
yes and no.
Go on.
No, because I would not have thrown my kid a prom knowing that this disease was out there. But yes, in the sense that the food shortages, the panic, the robberies, all that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the ways that, in this movie, again, because of uh, the high death rate from the disease, it was much more of, the fear was more palpable, right? Um,
Agreed.
I think, our experience, at least so far, and obviously we live in the first world, sort of life, but the comfort of our experience during this shut-in is not at all. I mean, this movie is much more stark about what life is like there's food shortages. They're waiting in line for meal rations from the National Guard.
Hmm.
I mean, you have people going house to house looking for food with guns. So I mean, I think those aspects, at least fortunately for us, are not quite as bad. But I was really impressed with. I mean, they obviously did a lot of research because, for example, when they go into they set up sort of a field hospital and an ice rink.
This is
That's going on. The briefings, I mean, I've been to some briefings like that, and that's pretty accurate of what it's like. So I was really impressed with some of those details. This movie was obviously well researched. But okay, so final question before we leave: what about this movie as a movie? What'd you think of that?
um. I know the first time I saw it, I was unsettled. Now that I'm living through something similar, I'm unsettled, but not in the same way I was before. First time I saw it, I was unsettled because, you know, people I thought were handling the situation well, but there was a lot of death. And I said, well, if it ever happens to us, I hope it's not as bad.
Mm.
Um, and as a movie, was it a good piece of entertainment? No, I think it's one of Steven Soderbergh, who directed the film, one of his weakest efforts. He had a great cast at his disposal, and he really didn't use it to as great effect as he could have. I think this movie was too short, and it could have had at least another 30 minutes of material where we see more of what what the effect on people is like, and how quick they actually do get that vaccine out. What are people's responses to that? So many different little questions that could have fleshed out the movie more. It's not as well fleshed out as it should have been.
Right. No, I agree with you entirely that this movie could have used another half an hour, could have developed more of that. One of the things, though, I will say, and just a little bit of a counter to that, is that it did a really good job moving time along because
Yeah,
it didn't seem to drag, and they had a lot of things to cover, and it did, and it almost again did it too quickly. One final note I was kind of happy to see that when they did develop the vaccine, they have this lottery system for choosing birthdays, right?
yeah.
My
Mm,
birthday was the first one. Woohoo!
nice. That means if anything happens, you'll be safe first.
Yeah, so if they do that kind of thing with the coronavirus, let's just hope that they use the same set of ping pong balls as the movie.
Let's hope so. So we will be back in a week or two to review some more movies. In the meantime, stay safe, wash your hands, and we will see you at home at our movies. Bye, guys.